Beau, most of you know him. I'll give you just a little bit of background. Retired biology teacher. He's been birding in Lake County since the age of 10. Many of you have been on field trips with Beau, and we all joke that he travels so fast that nobody can keep up with him. And a lot of times that's because he's traveling by bike, but that's not when he's leading field trips. You may have been attended our Zoom program last January. Our first program of 2021 actually was about Beau's big green year. He spent 12 months birding only by bike, traveled over 6,000 miles, and logged 276 species, and an amazing accomplishment. He also holds a big day record in 2016 with Andy Stewart and Eric Lundquist for seeing 164 species in the state in one day. That's a big day. He's the
county.
Oh, in the county, sorry. Yeah. Great Texas Birding Classic Big Sit Champ in 2020. He's written articles for Birding and Birdwatching Magazine, and he is a local treasure. So he actually proposed this program, and I said, yes. So take it away, Beau.
Thanks. All right, so let me first make sure I can get my text set up right. So I'll make sure you guys can see this.
Right.
All right, that's not it.
No.
Okay. Can you guys see that?
Nope.
Okay.
We saw your name.
Yeah, you've disappeared, Beau, but that's per our rehearsal that happened.
All right, so I want to share screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Got that?
Nope.
So you don't see any of that stuff?
No.
Only your name.
Why is not? Okay, what's different than what we did this afternoon? Okay, so if I go to share content, then I want to go to share screen, right?
Right.
All right, you guys see that?
No. Mm.
Okay. How about now?
Nope.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
Now you got it?
I got the
You get the circle, the red circle?
yeah, the screen. Yeah, you are sharing screen.
Right.
We're close. We're there. I got your, yep.
You see
now
that?
we're at February, but
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
close enough.
all right.
Bam, there we go.
Yay.
All right, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay, so
Technology.
yeah. Okay, I'm pretty excited about this because really my favorite thing pretty much anytime is finding birds. And just so you know, this isn't really an identification thing, just in case people might be confused. I'm not really going to show how to identify stuff, but so we're going to go through some various things and talk about things that I've picked up that helped me to find birds, because you really can't identify anything until you find it. So we're going to start with time of year, and we're going to go through the calendar, and then we'll talk about specific families of birds, and then we'll talk about the weather. We'll talk a little bit about songs and calls, a little bit about habitat, some things about behavior, and then different kinds of plants that you can find with specific types of birds. So that should cover quite a bit. And as always, let me know if you have questions on things as we go through this. All right, so we'll start with the year. So January, there's actually quite a bit to look for in January. So you have your diving ducks on the lakefront, you got your owls, northern harriers are here, rough-legged hawks are here, northern shrikes are here. You go look for your falcons on the lakefront, snow buntings and longspurs. Anytime you got farm fields, they especially like scrapes on the sides of roads. So whenever it snows and the plows come through, right after the plows come through is a great time to go look for sparrows, longspurs, and buntings on the side of the road. If you have a road that's got, like farm field on the side of it. There's not a lot here in Lake County, but Town Line Road right off of Allegheny is a great spot where I always go check, and there's always something out there after it snows and the plows have been through. Gulls on the lakefront, obviously, anytime there's open water someplace. Look for geese. And also you'll have bald eagles around if there's open water. And obviously you're going to be looking for your feeder birds. And some birds show up at feeders that are around at various times of the year, but they're harder to find in the summer and easier in the winter, like Carolina wrens and tufted titmice that'll show up at feeders. And so they're easier to find in the wintertime than they are at other times of the year. All right, so that's January. February, you're going to keep looking for January stuff, but then toward the end of the month, birds start moving. So your migration actually begins at the end of February, and your geese start moving at February, especially greater white frontage. They're usually one of the first ones. If you get some south winds at the end of February, there's a lot of times you get greater white frontage showing up somewhere. And waterfowl migrate during the daytime also. So you can see lots of things in the air if you have the right winds in February. Pintails as well. And the gull frolics in February. So you had to get out to North Point Marina and work on your gull identification. That's a great place, great social environment, but also you got Amar out there giving gull tutorials and all kinds of people out there helping with gull stuff. It's really a great time. March is where your waterfowl comes. So in March, all the waterfowl are coming in. Most of the peak of waterfowl is toward the end of the month, but your earlier ones like the geese, as you mentioned before, and then pintails and canvasback will start coming in. And so that's your waterfowl month. And then things start to heat up in April. So you have your loons at the beginning of the month, along with grebes. The blackbirds start coming in. Vesper sparrow is one of the first songbirds that start showing up outside the blackbirds, and especially if there are burns around, you want to check for Vesper sparrows. They love burned areas. And then the warblers start coming at the last week of April. May is the big time. So in May, most of your passerines are coming through. Waterfowl is pretty much dwindled to almost nothing at that point, but all your songbirds are coming through, and you're looking at the weather a lot. So if you haven't looked at Birdcast, you really should bookmark this site because it's fantastic for trying to figure out what you're looking for, when's a good time to be going out. And tonight is predicted to be the biggest night of the fall so far for migration. 560 million birds are predicted to be moving through that area of white on the screen right there. Now, the thing with Birdcast, it predicts the movement of the birds, but you can't really, I mean, I anyway have not been able to with 100% certainty go, oh, it's going to be great tomorrow, and then go out there, and even though it's lit up like a Christmas tree, you go out the next day and there's not very many birds around. And this has happened numerous times. And I have some explanation for it, but it's not 100% effective. But you got to have something to slow down and stop the birds for them to land so that we can find them the next day. So if you have something like this, tonight, those birds are headed for Texas. And, if nothing stops them, they're just all going to migrate through. And so we might not really have that much in the morning. But the sheer volume of birds also might just make it so that when sunrise comes and they're still moving, there's still going to be a lot of them hitting the ground around here. So that's a possibility. So in any case, you're going to want to go check tomorrow anyhow, if you have a chance. And then, the next night, tomorrow night's supposed to be good as well. And then you have, what is that, Thursday night? So that's still supposed to be good. So you got all these nights coming up. Now, here's what I like. I like this view actually better. It's the live view. And so if you look at the live view shows you how the birds are moving. So that's sunset. The red line is sunset. And so that's what the birds are doing right now. So there's not really a whole lot heated up at this point in time. Well, what I like to do in the morning when I get up before it's light out is to look at this map and see what the live part looks like. So even though it could be lit up like the previous pictures, if it shows all the birds have moved to the south already by the time you get to 6 a.m., well, then there's probably not going to be a lot out there because they've already moved through. So I think this is a more accurate predictor of actually the way actually things are going to show up. But that's just something that I like to look at.
Bo, can you explain how you can tell that they've moved to the south? Is it that
So the darker, here's your
dark
key on
one?
light. So it will show you. Let me go back to the previous picture. So on this picture, so here's tonight. So when you look at it at 6 a.m. and it's showing you the live view, at some point tonight, like around 10 o'clock, somewhere around there, it's going to be white. And then if you look at this at 6 a.m., it's going to show the color dim as the birds start landing. And so they're not migrating anymore. So what happens if your color is still bright to the south, but then around the Chicago area, it's like purple, that means all the birds already moved to the south and there's none left out here. And they're still moving to the south and they've all passed through. But if at 6 a.m., it still looks orange and yellowish and stuff, well, then there's a decent possibility, I think anyway, that something would be, on the ground to look at. And I found that's a lot more true in most of the cases that I've been out looking for birds. Also, it shows you the rain here on the picture. If there's rain coming through at the same time these birds are migrating, that's also another great time to go out because the rain's going to bring birds down. So if you have rain at the same time you have migration, that's going to cause mini fallouts, and you're going to want to go out looking for birds on those days, especially. Actually, anytime you have rain overnight, it's a good time to go out. So, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Let me remind people to put your questions in the chat, and I will either have them at the end or as we're going along. Thanks, Bo. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, so in May, you got most of your migrations happening for the spring. By the time you get to June, it's mostly done with. The first week, you still have some late migrants, like white rump sandpiper comes through late. That's Andy Stewart's picture on the left, by the way. Also, just a couple of words about photos. I'm not going to win any awards for photos, so I apologize for my photo qualities. But, I get what I can get, which is usually through my scope and is not great. So, but you can tell what the birds are, hopefully. But that's Andy's photo of the white rump sandpiper. Dick Sissels come in late. Morning warblers stick around late. They don't always come in late, but a lot of times you can find them through the first week in June. I've found them many times singing in various places that late. So, and it's the height of bird song. Get out and start doing your breeding bird surveys. We'll talk about song in a little bit, but that's basically what June is. And then things begin again in July. So you don't have too many months where there's not migrating birds. The beginning of shorebird migration is July. So as soon as July 1 hits, you're going to have some birds migrating through, mostly yellowlegs and least sandpipers, but things will start to move. Some other ones move fairly early though as well, like avocets sometimes. And you have post-breeding dispersal also. So the juveniles of the previous bird of the breeding season that just ended are now spreading out to occupy territory, and they don't know where they're going. They end up in all kinds of weird places. So you get herons a lot of times, neotropic cormorants show up out here, blue grosbeaks especially. We haven't had summer tanagers in a couple of years now, I think, but we usually have one of them someplace along the lakefront. So those are good. And you have lots of juveniles of all types of birds in July. August is your peak shorebird migration month. So you're out looking for shorebirds on mudflats, lakefronts, fields, turf farms, anywhere you have puddles, basically. And if you use eBird, make sure you check your bar charts. So this is set up for Lake County. I have it set up for the whole year, but you can look for the bar charts and you can see. So if we scroll to the shorebirds, here's, look up for August up at the top, and you can see, you know, the birds that show up mostly in August and July and so on. You can see which ones are the later shorebirds, like Dunlin, for example. There's Dunlin that shows up mostly in October. So they're not all the same. Mostly they're in August, but you have different types. Long-billed dowitcher is another one that shows up later. So if you use this chart on eBird, this will help you a lot too if you're looking for specific types of birds. And then September is the fall month where we're at right now. That's your height of passerine and songbird migration for the fall. Broad-winged hawk migration is going to peak pretty much this week or next week, depending on the weather. Although we have some good hawk days coming up in the next couple of days, so you should get out to the hawk watch too. Shorebirds have tapered down already to almost not much. There's a couple I've had at Rollins, which Rollins Savannah is probably the best shorebird spot in the county right now, except for the lakefront. So, and there haven't been much out there. So that's September. Then October, you have your sparrows. So sparrow peaks about the second week. I've already had Nelson sparrow at Rollins Savannah, so they're here. I know other people have had them in various places. LeConte will show up at the beginning of October. And then most of your sparrows will start peaking in the second week. Yellow rump warblers will start peaking, and orange crowns will start peaking. And that's at the end of the month is a good time to start looking for short-eared owls as well. And then November is your main owl month. Finches start showing up. So start looking for your migratory owls, which are saw-whets, long-ears, and short-ears. We'll talk about those more later in a bit. Diving ducks like scoters on Lake Michigan, gulls, geese in November, your snow geese, your Ross's geese, your evening grosbeaks. That's Rob Bernberg's photo, by the way.
I remember that one.
I was way too slow getting my camera on that baby. He was only there for about 5 seconds and then gone. That was a great shot. And then December, snowy owls. Gotta love those snowies. That was my biggest miss of the year last year, and I'm not gonna ever forget it. The day I left town, it showed up one day. Finches, hopefully we'll have another. I don't think the finch forecast has been out yet. Has anybody seen that? I don't think it's out yet, but the finch forecast, Ron Pittaway used to do a finch forecast. Tyler Hoare does it now, HOAR. And that tells you what the probability of getting the eruptive finches for the winter is. And so hopefully we'll have another good finch year. I don't know anything about the crop up north, so we'll see as far as, you know, what the probability of those would be. Purple sandpipers start showing up at the end of November, and then you can get them into the beginning of December. That was a huge bird that I got last year when Andy found one of those at the at North Point Marina. All right, so that's your year. Now, by certain types of birds, we'll look specifically at certain types of birds. So we'll start with the waterfowl. Now, diving ducks, if you want to find diving ducks, you want to try to do a lake watch is the best way to do it. And so you want easterly winds, depending on what time of the year it is. Like right now, you'd want northeasterly winds. And if there's rain out over the lake, that's even better because we'll drive the birds closer to shore. But you want easterly winds because that pushes the birds closer to shore and makes it easier to see them. However, the wind's also in your face, but that's just the way it goes. And so if you can find a wind block of some sort, that helps. But the best, I think last year when I was doing my biking big year, I was out there with Andy and Rob and Cece, and that was probably the best lake watch I ever had in my life there. We had wind in our face, but it wasn't that strong. There was rain out over the lakefront, and we had scoters flying by us not very far. I mean, the best looks I can ever remember having of them out there. And that was great. We had all 3 of them one day, bunch of loons. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. you get a good lake watch day, you can get a lot of cool stuff flying by. Puddle ducks like shallower water, so you're going to find them in the emergent vegetation. Make sure that I've made this mistake numerous times where I've looked at ponds for ducks and seen no ducks on the water and then gone, oh, there's no ducks. And then 2 minutes later, there's a duck that climbs out of the vegetation into the water. And then I get the scope on the reeds, and that's where all the ducks are. So make sure you look at all the vegetation along the side, because that's where a lot of the ducks hang out, especially green-winged teal and pintail. They love to hide in there. Water lilies are also nice places they like to hide out. So those are great places to look, and that's a good place to look for bitterns too. I've had least bitterns walking around on lily pads numerous times. Geese like newly harvested grain fields. So coming up this fall, whenever you see, the farmers out there harvesting the grain, check the next day for water for geese out there, because almost always they're out there eating all the grain that came off the corn cobs and whatnot out in the field. In Independence Grove, the short grass around the lakes, the geese just love that place. More than any other one spot that I've ever been to, that place has more geese than anywhere else, other than, the random cornfields that you find. So those are always good spots to look for them. Raptors, we have a cold front that just passed through. So tomorrow tomorrow we have more northerly winds. It's not so much northwest. So I'm not sure how good it will be tomorrow, but if you have that northerly component, birds are going to be moving south on those winds. So anytime a cold front comes through, followed by good northwest winds, the hawk watch is going to be a great place to go. And broad-winged hawks are coming through right now. So falcons you want to look for anywhere there's shorebirds, which is the lakefront is a great place. Rollins has them there every once in a while, although I still have to find either of them. I haven't found a peregrine or a merlin yet, but we'll see. But I've gone to what's the name of the place now? The huge shorebird spot down in Texas, Boulevard Flats. You go to Boulevard Flats in Texas, and there's almost always a peregrine around somewhere. Eagles. The best place for eagles around here, the Mississippi River is the best place, or the Illinois River, but in Lake County, if you want to go to the Chain of Lakes area, you can always find eagles, especially the Grass Lake Bridge or Docker's Restaurant. Behind there's almost always eagles like sitting on the ice. Sometimes they're up in trees, but there's a lot of times they're just sitting on the ice. So you can get good looks at those. I think I counted 23 of them from the Grass Lake Bridge one day, which was kind of cool. Ospreys nest on cell towers. You can always find those around the Chain of Lakes area. Has a couple of them. Rollins had one this year, although I think it was a failed nest attempt. I never saw any offspring there. But I think Vic said there were something like 9 nests in the Lake McHenry area. So there's a number of them that are out there. There's also one visible from Cedar Lake Road, I think, or that might be the same one, though I'm not sure. Owls. I love owls. I love trying to get saw-whets to scream because they're hilarious. So you go out in the end of October, the beginning of November, after a front's passed through, and play a saw-whet owl call, and the cat-like whine is the best one to use. And you can just use the call that's on the Sibley app. There's also a Cornell Lab CD that's got owl calls on it. It's got a huge variety of different ones, but the Sibley one's just fine. Try to pick an area that's got tangled vines, along with, it doesn't even have to have conifers, but tangled vine areas I think are more important for them. They like to hide in those tangles, especially low to the ground where there's an opening, and then fly out underneath them. And they like areas where there's open fields near water. And I just went out to Rollins last year. I've never had one there, and figured I'm going to go to a couple of spots where I think the habitat looks pretty good for them and just play a call and see what happens. And I got 2 of them. I got one up the Millennium Trail, which has since been cleared out by the Forest Preserve District, but we won't go there. And then I had another one just in a little wood lot right next to the trail behind some houses, but there's some standing water in there and a bunch of vines. And so I had them in both spots. It was really, really cool. And they're not quiet when they start crying. So it's pretty cool. Long-eareds, I have a harder time finding, but we'll talk about those in a little bit. Oh, actually it's right here. Okay. So, the long-eared owls, you can find them in short, dense pine groves. There's actually an area across the street from Pine Dunes Forest Preserve. It's part of the Forest Preserve, but it doesn't have trails in it. So people don't go there unless you're me, and I just walk around through plants and I don't care that much, but you have to bushwhack through some stuff. And it's an old nursery in the back, but it has brambles all over the place. And so you've got to wear some thick jeans to walk through there. But there's a bunch of short Scotch pine back there bunched together. And I never got a clean look at one, but I guarantee the owls I flushed out of there were long ears. There's no way they were anything else. And I probably flushed like 3 of them. So, I mean, they love that packed in short pine ear type of habitat. But the best place we had them, in the last couple of years was in a buckthorn thicket right next to a creek near Rollins. So that's where these pictures are from. They're both, the one to the left is Joe Stojak's picture. He's the one who found them. And he had like 7 of them, I think, which is insane. I've never seen more than 1 at a time. Well, before that, I'd never seen more than 1 at a time. I think when I went back there, we had like 3 or 4 of them, which was the coolest thing ever. I've never seen that many. Well, that was the first time I've ever seen any in Lake County. That bird is so hard. I've never had success finding that bird. So that was pretty cool. Oops, sorry. And you can find them in cedar groves as well. Willow thickets are another good place to find them. And they used to be in the willow thickets who were at Middle Fork before they cleaned them all out along the creek there. But so if you have willow thickets around and you have a grassland nearby, that's a good place to check as well. Actually, some of the owls out at Rollins, I'm pretty sure once we found that stand of owls, some of those owls were probably long-eareds that were out there. A lot of people were reporting owls, and I think some of them just didn't look carefully enough to make sure they weren't long-eareds, because they look very similar if you don't look at them carefully. And that can be tough to get a good look too, because it's at dusk. So, all right, Gulls. Obviously, you want to go to the lakefront, but also the landfill. If you've never been to the FedEx side of the landfill, if you're looking for gulls in the wintertime, it's a great place to go because they all sit right on the hill. And there's a huge shoulder on the, west side of 83. You can get really far away from the road. You don't have to worry about cars at all. And just sit there. I just went over there with my bike, sat there, put my scope up, and got 6 species of gulls in about an hour and a half this past January. It was awesome. And I got great looks at all of them.
Beau, you might want to explain where the landfill is.
Yeah, okay. So the Countryside landfill is right between 137 and Route 83 in Grays Lake. If you know where the fairgrounds are, it's just behind it to the northwest. So if you just go Peterson Road and turn right or turn north on 83, the FedEx plant is right there on the left, and you can just turn in right there. And, you can just park your car right there along the curb and then just jump out with your scope onto the grass right there and check out the hill. That's where all the garbage trucks are coming in, dumping all the waste from the day. and there's a ton of gulls there. You want to go obviously on a day that's not too windy. That would be terrible. But if it's not windy, you know, and it's a day of the week where there's garbage delivery, which is pretty much every day except Sunday, then you should have plenty of birds out there. The fairgrounds used to be great, but they're doing something there now to kick the gulls out. So I did have a couple of large concentrations of gulls this summer there. So I don't know, but I don't know. In the wintertime, I don't know what they're going to do. It's a good place to check because it used to be a great spot for them to accumulate, you know, and that's where we found slaty-backed gulls. That's where Amar found an ivory gull a couple of years ago. You know, that it's just a great spot if they let the gulls roost there. So there you go. All right, finches. Now, finches are very specific to different vegetation types. White-winged crossbills like spruces and tamaracks. So this picture was taken at Lyons Woods. And that's actually my photo. So I actually got a decent picture of one of them. The tamaracks at Bolo Bog are another great place to find them along the Tamarack Trail. Purple finches, and that's not a great photo of a purple finch, but, or excuse me, a red crossbill. Purple finches like ash seeds, as do evening grosbeaks. And you can find those in various places, and you know, a lot of yards have ash trees, but I found that finches are really common at Ryerson along the river. You can also find them a lot at Van Patten because there's some ash trees there. And I think there's some at Lyons too, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But purple finches make very distinctive calls too, and they fly over quite a lot during migration in the fall. So it's good to learn their calls. Redpolls like weedy fields, and they like alders and birches and birch stands especially. This picture is on a birch. The Botanic Garden on Spider Island is probably the best place to find redpolls. But if you don't want to go to the Botanic Garden, you know, looking at feeders is good, but fields like I found them at Rollins. I found them at Chain of Lake State Park out in the fields, just feeding on seed heads. So those are all good spots to check for them. And red crossbills like pines. Van Patten is by far the best place to find red crossbills, but you can find them at Lyons too. Bitterns and rails. Well, least bitterns, well, both types of bitterns actually like cattail marshes, but American bitterns need huge stands of cattail marsh. Least bitterns don't. They can just use little patches of cattails along a creek, any open water area. I'm sure most of you have probably seen the ones at Waukegan, and that's really, I mean, that kind of habitat there is pretty, you know, intruded by people. There's a lot of people that go through there, so that doesn't bother them very much. But it's near open water, and there's some cattails there for them to hide in. This picture in the bottom right I took at Horseshoe Lake State Park down by St. Louis, and that bird's just walking around on cattails. And I've seen other ones in various places doing the same thing, so that's something else to look at too. If you have an area that's got a lot of lily pads near the cattails, check the lily pads out. And yellow and black rails, obviously we don't have those very much. They're pretty rare, but if you're ever looking for them, they like grassy or wet areas. They don't really like cattails. I kicked one up at Rollins last year in some wet grass when I was just walking around looking for sparrows. So that was incredible. But yeah, that's where you're going to find those.
Which rail?
Yellow. I kicked up a yellow rail like right at my feet. It was right in front of me. I almost stepped on it. All right, sparrows. So you want to look for sparrows. I used to give Jim Solom a hard time because Jim would always drive through parking lots and find grasshopper sparrows and LeConte sparrows. Any sparrow in the world, Jim would just go look in a parking lot and find it. So actually, Parking lots and paved areas are really good to look on the sides, on the road sides and on the vegetation sides and the short grass. I go to Rollins more than any place else. It's right across the street from where I live. And I find them a lot along the fence line where the native planting nursery is, where the grass meets the fence. And so there's this little bare area of grass in between the wildflowers and the fence. And Jeff Bilski and I had a clay colored sparrow there a couple of weeks ago, and we had a couple other sparrows there. They like those areas that are by open spots or by fences or along the trail. I've had Vesper sparrows right along the trail at Rollins in the grassy area right by the trail. They like grit. Sparrows like to eat the grit in the morning and get the rocks that they have to use in their gizzard to grind up all the seeds that they eat. Finches do the same thing. So goldfinches are on the ground doing the same thing. So that's a great place to look for them. And of course, the weedy fields in the fall with all those seed heads is where you find a lot of sparrows. But you want to look along the edges whenever you can. Edges are always a great place to find them. Foxtail thickets are good for LeContes. LeContes love foxtail. And this picture of LeConte sparrow that I took, this is from 2012, so it's pretty old, but that's a foxtail plant that it's sitting on. And they love foxtail. And there's a grasshopper sparrow sitting on a cage. Vesper sparrows love burned areas. That's actually at Fort Sheridan right there, that picture from a few years ago. All right, warblers and vireos. Well, we all know warbler neck when you're sitting there trying to look at warblers at the top of the tree. I try to avoid that at all costs. And actually, for a lot of warblers, there's a few, obviously, you have to look up there, like ceruleans and Blackburnians are always sticking at the top of the tree. But a lot of them will go to middle branches. And if you have layered branches where you have trees of different heights, and you have some open branches. The oaks are the greatest because they have some areas of dense leaves, but they also have lots of open spots on the tree. And so you can look through there and actually see something. Some trees like hickories are so dense, it's really difficult, and the leaves are huge. And so it's really difficult to find the birds in there. But layering is great. Try to find plants of different heights. That's always a good thing to look at for any kind of bird, really, but especially for the warblers. And find an area that's got early morning sunshine, like Brushwood at Ryerson is one of the greatest places to look for warblers and vireos any time of the year. So early in the morning when the sun's hitting that front side of the woods. Rollins has a couple of places that are just like that. That warms up the trees and the insects, and that's where the first activity is going to be. And so that's where those birds are going to be early in the morning. After it gets later in the day, that's not going to be the case anymore. But early in the morning, which is your best time to look for birds anyway, that's going to be the best spot. And then learn your songs, which we'll go over in a minute. Flycatchers, they like snags a lot. They like to perch on empty branches. They like low hanging branches. So anytime you see open branches hanging down from trees, check those. And the Acadian flycatchers, the more habitat specific one, they like dense, matured floodplain forest. So the areas along the Des Plaines River are the best around here. Shorebirds we've mentioned, but don't forget athletic fields. We don't have a lot of turf farms around here. Actually, I don't know of any in Lake County, but athletic fields are a pretty close second. I found flocks of golden plovers out at Vernon Hills athletic fields on Fairview Drive a couple of years ago.
Oh, gosh.
Especially if they're sprinkling them regularly. And especially in a year like this year that's been so dry, if you got a field that gets watered regularly, that's a great place to look. And golden plovers, and well, it's pretty late for any shorebird right now, but golden plovers you can still find. We had a golden plover at the big sit last year that we did this coming weekend. So That's a red knot that I had this year that out at Rollins. All right, we've talked about weather a little bit already. This is a great site. Here's another site for you if you have not used it. The National Weather Service. Excuse me. Throat's getting a little dry. Ugh. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, they have a site that has, or a page that has fronts on it. And if you can check the fronts to see when the next front, I check this all the time to see when the next front's coming through. So here's the one that just passed today. So here's 24 hours from now. Oops. And then here's, you know, you can look like 5 days from now. What are we going to have? Nothing. There's no front. So, but you can check that and keep track of when the next fronts are coming. And whenever fronts are moving through, that's a good time to look for migrants. Shorebirds generally move ahead of the fronts and everything else behind the front. So, and it's cold fronts in the fall and then warm fronts in the spring. And so when you have frontal passage, you should prepare yourself for some migrants. So hopefully we'll get something, although it helps to have some rain along with that. Usually we have rain with fronts, but it's been so dry this year that we haven't gotten a whole lot of rain. So it's
Oh,
not going to bring.
can you
Go ahead.
identify what a front is? Is this blue line?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
very unvisual, so.
Sorry. Yeah, the fronts, here's this blue line's a cold front. The red line's a warm front. So this is when it's mixed with blue and red, it's kind of an occluded front. So that's not really the greatest thing, but like, I don't know if we have any warm fronts to look at. So, but a warm front's going to look like this, only it's going to be red and it's going to come up from the south in the spring. So it's going to be completely the opposite of the cold front. This cold front is coming down from the northwest.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's coming down from the northwest. And then if you had a warm front, it would be coming up from the southwest in the springtime. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're going to check your fronts. Also, if you get fog is another good thing along the lakefront, especially. Although, I mean, I hate fog because you can't see past your nose. But if you go to the lakefront and the fog clears out a lot of times in a few hours anyway, but you go to the lakefront, the fog will bring down birds like shorebirds, especially. Ducks. You might have some scoters in the water, you know, if you have fog. So it's kind of like rain, which makes sense. You know, it's water in the atmosphere. So if you get some fog, you might want to check that also. Wind is my least favorite environmental factor to go out and bird with. I'd rather take rain instead of wind. But if you have wind, it's good to check bottoms of hillsides. Bottoms of hills are good, and ravines. Those are really good places because birds will seek shelter. Birds really don't like wind either, except for large birds like hawks will migrate in large, you know, in pretty heavy winds. But your smaller birds really don't like them too much. So if you want to find them, you have to look in areas that are protected from the wind. Leeward side of woodland edges, which is the edge away from the wind. And if you're looking at winds, you want to see like our migrants going to be coming. We want in this area here in Lake County and Cook County on the lakefront, we want areas with westerly components. So northwest winds or just west winds are going to blow things toward the lakefront. So that's going to give us a greater chance to see birds then. So here's an app. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So this is Windy. This is the Windy app. This is a great app too. Because this will show you the direction of the winds. So our winds are coming right now, northerly, northwesterly kind of. It's kind of mixed around the Chicago area a little bit. Some of it might actually be off the lake, which is not good, but unless you want to go do a lake watch. That's great for a lake watch, but that's why Greg actually posted, Greg Neese posted on Facebook that tomorrow would be a great day to be at Miller Beach, which is down here at the point, because these northeasterly winds are going to funnel stuff down to the point at Miller Beach. And so you'll get a shot at getting some jaggers, possibly, you know, some of your diving ducks. Things are moving now. Weird things like redneck Fowler ropes and stuff like that. But Windy's a great app because it tells you, you know, what your wind forecast is going to be for the week. So here's Wednesday. Thursday actually looks better than Wednesday, I think, as far as hawk watching possibly. But I don't know. And then the winds calm down a little bit more on Friday, but they're westerly, so that's good because that's blowing all the birds toward us on whatever's coming through. So I like that app a lot too. All right. Now you should definitely try to do your best to learn the bird calls and songs. I honestly identify probably 90% of songbirds by hearing them. And the only way I got good at doing this was by, in my car, I just took CDs. Instead of playing music, I'd play bird calls and try to identify them all when I was driving all the time. And the Stokes ones are great because they play the call first and then the name of the bird after that, instead of the other way around, which is what the Peterson guide does. But the Peterson one is still good. But I like the Stokes one because I could quiz myself pretty much and put it on scramble, and then it would just play anything, and then I would just had to try to figure out what it was. You can really get good when you start doing stuff like that. And then obviously get out in the field so you can hear them yourself. The Merlin app is good for helping you identify things. I personally haven't used the Merlin app, but I know a lot of other people have and they like it. This is just a picture of the page I printed off the internet where it's got all the, you just go to Amazon and look up those things. They have Google Audio. CDs aren't really a thing anymore, so they have audio books though, and I'm not sure exactly how I got the audio CDs like 10 years ago. So
I would also recommend, I just put it in the chat, John Feith, he came to speak to us a few years ago.
Oh, John Feitz was good too. Yeah, I used his. He was like the first one I used.
Yeah, and he's
So who
from
cooks for you?
Wisconsin, so his recordings are like the regional dialect of the birds, and and they also give you great mnemonics.
Yeah.
So I that's my favorite one. John Feith, Feith.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Thanks for bringing that up. That is a good one. That was one of the first ones I used, actually.
Yeah, I think you're the one who told me Savannah Sparrow. I'm trying to think of the mnemonic for it, but you're the one who first told me about that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Oh, take it easy.
Take it easy. Yeah. I think I don't know if I got that from, is that on John's CD?
It is. It is.
Oh, okay. Maybe that is where I got it. Okay, cool. So anyway, yeah, try to learn those. Calls are a lot harder. The songs, try to learn the songs. I really just, as far as calls go, they're hard. You really got to get out in the field a lot, hear them, and then see the birds after they make lots of calls, and then, you can start picking it up. It's a lot tougher though. I mean, I go out birding like almost every day, so eventually I start figuring out which ones are. Some are easier than others, like yellow rumped warblers, I think are pretty easy, but then a lot of your warbler chips sound the same to me, so that's hard. But it's a warbler. You can almost always tell it's a warbler though.
Right.
And then you go, oh, there's a warbler, and you can start looking for him.
Well,
so
I
that
think
helps a lot.
I mean, I was just going to say that's another thing, that if you don't hear any sound, keep going. Probably.
Oh, if you don't hear any sound, that comes up next. I'll tell you about that one.
Okay.
All right, habitat. I just threw some habitats in there, things to look for. We talked about layered edges. anywhere there's moving water, you're going to have birds. Birds love moving water. And if you want to attract them to your yard, just put in some moving water. You know, a bird bath that's got drips in it. They love that stuff. Conifer stands in the wintertime, find a conifer stand and you're going to find some cool birds. They seek protection in there. The finches are there. You know, sometimes you can find warblers in there, like orange crowns or yellow rumps. So conifer stands are great in the wintertime. If you're on the coast, obviously we don't have tides here, but if you're on the coast, low tide has tons of birds. So you find out your tide charts. I was just out in the Atlantic coast. I made sure to check out the tide charts and then go out at low tide. And there was a lot of cool stuff out there. Just yellow crowned night herons walking around on a low tide. You know, something that's common there, but I never see those birds. So that's cool. Burns, as we mentioned before, in the edges of roads and trails and scrapes, we mentioned all that stuff. So here's a picture of snow buntings and short grass right next to the road at North Point Marina. That's a great place to find them. Your seed eaters like sides of roads. So, all right, behavior. So here's a couple things. Now, this is both bird and human behavior, but so Rena just mentioned a good point. So you're walking around, you come to an area and you don't hear anything. Now I'm terrible because I just do this constantly, but it's not terrible because the birds can just ignore you and they do that just fine too. We're not talking about playing breeding calls where you can possibly interrupt breeding or something like that. We're not talking about that. Pishing, you're just making generic noises, but it sounds like a titmouse making an alarm call. So the birds just peek their heads up or make sounds just to jump in. It's not anything that's going to hurt them. Screech owl calls, they hate screech owls. So usually you'll have at least chickadees and nuthatches will start squawking and then other birds will start looking around to see what's happening. And if there's an area where I come to and there's nothing happening, I just do a couple of screech owls and some pishing. And then if I get nothing, then I move on. But usually I get something. And so then I can check and see what's there. And that's honestly, there have been so many places where I start doing some pishing and screech owl calls, and all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of birds. So there's birds there, even if you don't hear them, but they may or may not want to show themselves, and that's fine. But you can always try doing that first. And by screech owl calls, I don't mean playing a screech owl tape, although you can do that, I suppose, but I don't do that. I just whistle, and my screech owl whistle is terrible. It's not even very good.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, you have a good screech owl. Again.
It's good enough to get a screech owl to respond once in a while, but not really that great. So I've heard a lot of other people who are very good at doing it, but I'm not. But it still elicits a response when I go out. So that's all I care about. I was up the Millennium Trail the other day. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning and I was doing screech owl calls because I had a bunch of chickadees, a couple of warblers, doing some screech owl calls, and a screech owl answered me at like 10:30 in the morning.
Wow.
It was pretty funny.
Oh, we have a request that you also pish.
I got a couple of books for you at the end too that I'll show you. But my pishing's not anything spectacular either. But although I try to do like different speeds, but I don't know if that makes any difference or not. But that's just me going, oh, let's try something different, see if that works.
I try it, it never works, but that's just me.
Yeah. Sometimes I go really fast, sometimes I'll go and sometimes I'll do like wren chatter, like so it works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, but I find that it works more often than it doesn't. And then if you have shorebreed areas, watch for falcons, like we mentioned before, and waterfowl areas for eagles and goshawks, especially in the winter. If you have open water and you have accumulations of waterfowl, you got to look around for raptors because I guarantee you there's at least an eagle somewhere. And we had goshawks. One day we were doing a big day in November. Steve Bailey and Andy Stewart and I were walking around at Rollins, and a goshawk flew out of the woods and stooped on a duck, like right in front of us. It was amazing. So yeah, check that. Anytime you have waterfowl around in the wintertime, you want to check for other stuff too. All right, by plant types, you have your specific types of plants that certain birds like. We've mentioned a few of them already, but spruces, you have red-breasted nuthatches like spruces. Cape May warblers like spruces a lot. Now, we can find Cape Mays in deciduous trees also and just find them along the lakefront, but I've found around where I live, because I normally just try to bird around my house, even more this year than in the past. I just look for spruce trees to try to find Cape Mays, and then that's where I've been successful finding them, not deciduous trees. Although, like I said, you can find them there. If there's enough of them moving through, you can pretty much find them anywhere. But I like the spruces have been pretty good. That's where they breed, so a lot of those trees are good for them. Pines, we've mentioned the red crossbill, obviously pine warblers, red-breasted nuts like them as well, and pine siskins, anything that has the name pine in front of it. Red poles, we've talked about those. Ash, we talked about those. And then you got your berry shrubs. So in the wintertime, wherever you have berry shrubs, and buckthorn, as evil as it is, counts as a berry shrub because it's got lots of berries on it. Although they're not very nutritional, but they're better than nothing. So you'll find waxwings there, thrushes there. Heaven forbid a pine grosbeak should show up somewhere, but that would be a great spot for one, or at somebody's feeder. Oaks are great. Flowering crabs, cherries, and service berry are all great for warblers because while they like the oaks, when the oaks are budding in the spring, there's lots of insects on them. So you'll find lots of warblers on oaks, and it's great because that's a great place to look for them. And flowering crabs, cherries, and serviceberry are all early flowering trees that also have lots of insects on the flowers. And so you get lots of warblers there also. So that's a good place to look for those birds in the springtime. And foxtail it's a weedy grass, and a lot of people look at it with a negative, overtone, I guess, or undertone. It's not. It's found in disturbed areas, but LeConte sparrows love it, and so do Smith's longspurs. So if you have stands of foxtail growing in a farm field, it's a good place to check for Smiths. Also, burned areas are great places to check for Smiths too. So you got burned areas, check for Vesper sparrows, and check for Smith's longspur in the spring. That's a tough bird to find around here, but that's a good place to look for one. I had one at Rollins a few years back, and that's exactly where it was. It was in a burned spot at Rollins. And here's some great books that I highly recommend if you don't have them. So Pete Dunn's Essential Field Guide Companion basically goes through every species of bird and explains its habits, where you can find it, what it associates with, when it migrates. It's honestly my favorite book in my entire library. You can't beat the wealth of information in that book for finding stuff. I constantly refer to it. And Pete Dunn's Art of Fishing is a great book if you want to know anything about fishing. It has an audio CD also, but he talks about fishing in detail in that book. And then a lot of the stuff that I talked about, I got from reading his book, The Art of Bird Finding, which is a great book also. Pete's just a great writer, period. But then he's got tons of info on here on how to find stuff, and he knows how to find birds. And there you go.
Wow. Well,
How's that?
The first thing I need to do is learn how to identify my plants and trees. But if you have
Sibley's Guide to Trees is a good book too.
Which one?
Sibley's Guide to Trees is a good book.
Yeah. Oh, I think I have that. Yeah. Any other questions in the chat, or Sunny, would you like to let everybody, unmute everybody and,
I can try. Hold on a second, participants. Yeah.
well, yeah, Bo's just a wealth of information always, and if you lucky enough to bird with him, he's amazing.
Not that amazing.
And
to
a lot
say.
of fun. A lot of fun if you can keep up with him.
Yeah, I'm just too spastic, you know, we all have our issues.
Any other questions for Bo? I think, now I know we recorded it. What's our situation? I did get a question about whether it's going to be available for afterwards. So what is our situation here? Are we gonna keep it for a little while or?
Yeah, I never asked Beau if I could record.
Uh-oh.
But
Oh,
Beau's
wow.
always been, I know, Beau's very generous. He's allowed us to pass, so I just did it. So sorry, Beau, but
Oh,
I
that's
do have, Zoom allows us to store it for a short period of time, short being like a week or 2 weeks. If you want a link to this actual presentation, you should send me an email. It's a simple email address. I'm Sonny, SONNY. This is Lake Cook Audubon, so I'm Sonny at lakeCookAudubon.org, and ask for the link. Someday, which is not today or anywhere near future, I'll actually upload this to YouTube and put it on the website, but that's a different project. But YouTube allows us a certain amount of storage. So we have to refresh it periodically, but at least for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll have enough storage and you can review this presentation if you wish.
And I have a few more questions in the, a lot of thank yous in the chat, but a few more questions.
Yeah. You're all
Margaret,
welcome.
I'm not sure, Margaret, what you mean. How do I do the summary bird list with the bar chart you showed? What?
Okay, so if you go to eBird, you need to have an account. You have to set up an account on eBird. So if you don't have one, you won't be able to do it. But it's really easy to set up an account. You don't have to put personal information or anything in there. You just have to make an email and a password. But then you can go to
I have an account.
Okay, you go to Explore. There's a link at the top.
And the bar chart.
There's a link there's a bar at the top, and it has Explore as one of the options. And if you go to Explore, then one of your choices is to pick bar charts. And from that, you can just put in information. So you put in, what geographic area do you want? What time of the year do you want? And then it will give you a spread of all the stuff.
Can I just say like Lake County, Illinois, or?
So first it will give you, do you want me to go through it? Rena, you want me to show people how to do this? I can show them.
Why don't?
It won't take.
Okay, let me ask the two other questions, then come back.
All right, we'll come back to that, and I'll show you how to
Just two
do
other
it.
questions. What's the owl behind you?
Oh, that's a
People
barred
wanna
owl.
know.
I don't know where it came from, but it's a barred owl. Yeah.
Okay. And I think this is from Carrie and Letitia. Midwest ash forests are devastated. What's the impact of purple?
Oh,
finch
well,
on our species?
yeah. That's not good, but it's not going to be a good impact. But the good thing about the purple finches is that they'll eat other stuff too. They're not specific to ashes, so they'll just start eating other seeds.
Yeah. Okay, if you want a demo, and then we'll jump off afterward.
Let me show you how to do the eBird thing. You see that?
No,
Here we go again.
we're back to not seeing the screen.
All right, sorry. Let's see, let's go to screen, start broadcast. Okay. You got the red dot now?
Yeah, now we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. I always forget to hit the start broadcast thing. Okay, so here's ebird.org. So can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, you need to have your account. So here's my account name shows up here. So if you have an account, you're good. So here's your bar that's got all the stuff. So you hit explore over here on the left. And you go to explore. Now you have options down here at the bottom. So you can explore hotspots. You can look at all this. This is a wealth of information. eBird is by far the thing that I use more than anything else to try to find stuff. So you can go to bar charts right here on the bottom right. So you click on bar charts and then it will give you this picture. So we're in the United States. So then the next thing you will pick would be Illinois. And then you decide, do you want the whole state of Illinois or you just want counties? So we'll pick, and you can pick multiple counties. So you can go, we'll pick Cook and Lake. And then you hit continue. Then you want to put in your date range. So if you want the whole year forever, you want the whole year and you want all the data that's ever been accumulated on eBird, then that's what you got right here. So we've had 413 species in Cook and Lake County since 1900.
Wow.
Okay. So it's not really that useful if you're going to use that large of a range. So let's make it a little more specific. So we'll change the date. Let's look right now. So we're going to go, we'll go September. And since we're getting close to October, we'll go September, October, but you can go September to September if you just want to do September. And I usually just do like within the past 3 years or so. We've had so many changes since then. So, and then hit continue, and then that will give you your bar chart.
Right.
So that's all the stuff that you can look at. You can see, wood ducks. They're pretty common. If you want to see when something not so common is going to be found. Lesser scops going to be end of March. It's going to be the best time to find a lesser scop. So the thicker the green box is, the more common that bird has been, or the most sightings there have been reported for that bird. So you can see most of your ducks toward the end of March start getting a little thicker. But then things like common goldeneye start dwindling because they're here in the wintertime. So the density of their populations, or most of their sightings, are actually at the end of February and all of January, because they're here all winter. Okay, how's that?
Great.
Good.
Okay.
So thank you. Okay, so I've got a couple of, thank you. I learned so much. And I think that again, if you write Sunny, if you want to see the recorded presentation for the next week or so, you could even, take screenshots of of the most relevant screens for you, for whatever you're looking for. So thanks, Beau. It was great.
Sure.
We all have a
My
lot
pleasure.
to learn.
There's always a lot to learn.
Yeah. Thanks, Bo. It was great.
Good
All right,
birding,
thank you,
everyone.
guys.
And let's hope for a
Thank
good
you.
migration next few days.
Thanks. Yeah. Let's hope tomorrow's a big day. Everybody get out and find birds.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beau.
All right.
Good
Stay
night.
well.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Night, Bo.
We'll
Okay.
wait for everybody to sign off here.
Right. I am stopping recording.